David to make sure that his family is honored and protected and that sort of thing. So when we get to chapter 9, back to our text, 2 Samuel chapter 9, David wants to know, who can I show kindness to for Jonathan's sake? So he's remembering Jonathan asking him that. Remember, Jonathan has now died. And so Ziba comes forward. And I would just like to read a little bit of that. Ziba answered to the king, there is still a son of Jonathan. He is lame in both feet. Well, where is he? And Ziba answered, he is at the house of Machir, son of Amiel, in Lo-debar. So King David had him brought from Lo-debar, from the house of Machir, son of Amiel. When Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. And David said, Mephibosheth, at your service, he replied. Don't be afraid, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the lands that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table. And then Mephibosheth says, why should what is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me? So showing a lot of humility. And so we're told there in chapter 9 that from that point on, Jonathan was allowed to eat at the king's table, which was a great honor, showed how protected he was. He was allowed to live in Jerusalem, and he was, of course, lame in both feet. That's not the end of the story, though. If you go to 2 Samuel 16, you come to another little something or another that relates again to Mephibosheth. Just a few verses, let me read them beginning in verse 1. When David had gone a short distance beyond the summit, there was Ziba, the steward of Mephibosheth, waiting to meet him. He had a string of donkeys saddled and loaded with 200 loaves of bread, 100 cakes of raisin, 100 cakes of figs, and a skin of wines. The king asked Ziba, why have you brought these? And Ziba answered, the donkeys are for the king's household to ride, the bread and fruit are for the men to eat, and the wine is to refresh those who become exhausted in the wilderness. Then the king asked, well, where is your master's grandson? Ziba said to him, he is staying in Jerusalem. Now notice this right here. Because he thinks, today the Israelites will restore to me my grandfather's kingdom. Then the king said to Ziba, all that belonged to Mephibosheth is now yours. I humbly bow, Ziba said, may I find favor in your eyes before my lord the king. So here we have most likely, or possibly, Ziba's basically coming to show David honor because Mephibosheth is now forsaking him, and Ziba's trying to kind of horn in. You read some commentaries and they kind of think that. They think that he's being deceptive. It's not really true that Mephibosheth is doing that. And so I know this, a lot of this may not make a whole lot of sense, or who cares kind of a thing to us, but just understand that, when you read, sometimes you find stories that you kind of have to put them together from several different parts of the same book or a couple of different books. Over in chapter 19, verses 24 through 30, though, kind of shed some more light on the story, and then we'll be done with this one. Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, also went down to meet the king, and he had not taken care of his feet or trimmed his mustache or washed his clothes, so he looked like a beatnik. From the day the king left until the day he returned safely. When he came from Jerusalem to meet the king asked him, well, why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth? And he said, my lord the king, since I, your servant, am lame, I said I will have my donkey saddled and will ride on it so I can go with the king. Notice this, but Ziba, my servant, betrayed me, and he has slandered your servant to my lord the king. My lord the king is like an angel of God, so do whatever you wish. All my grandfather's descendants deserve nothing but death from my lord the king. But you gave your servant a place among those who eat at your table. So what right do I have to make any more appeals to the kings. And so the king said to him, why say more? I order you and Ziba to divide the land. So in a sense, David didn't know who's really telling the truth, but assuming that since he doesn't know, let's just settle this by sort of dividing up the land so that Ziba gets some and you get some. And so anyway, Mephibosheth said, let him take everything. Now my lord, the king, has returned to his home safely. Just an interesting story, but one that we kind of skip past and probably don't catch because, again, it's spread out onto different verses and places. So we get to chapter 11 and 12, familiar story, David and Bathsheba, Uriah. Uriah is the husband of Bathsheba. David has Uriah sent ahead to fight to where he's at the front of the fiercest fighting and he's killed, which is David's intention. And that way he and Bathsheba can marry, so there's a lot of sinfulness going on here. And then, of course, Nathan tells the story of the ewe lamb. A rich man has a friend coming to visit, and he wants to offer him a great meal, but he's rich and sort of selfish about his property, and so instead he goes to a poor man's house and takes his little pet lamb, basically, and makes it as a meal for. And so Nathan's basically telling this story to say, David, that's what you've done. And so David, of course, repents. So we most of us really know that story. So that's in right there, 2 Samuel. Then we get into 13 through 19, these chapters. Again, we're just scanning them. We're just going to look at what they have to do. There's several bad things that happen. David has gotten himself into a heap of trouble because of his own wandering eye with Bathsheba. And even though he repents and stuff, it still is affecting his family. We have Amnon's sin with his half-sister Tamar. He really is attracted to her, and she tells him to, don't do anything to me, and he ends up basically raping her. And so she goes to Absalom in shame. Her life is ruined, and she lives with Absalom as his sister for the rest of her life. But Absalom sets out to avenge his brother-in-law, his half-brother, basically, is what he is, and he ends up killing Amnon. So this is where Absalom comes up. And, we all know the story of Absalom hanging in a tree by his hair and being killed. It's all because of this starting thing where Amnon had raped his half-sister, which is Absalom's full sister, and Absalom avenged him by killing Amnon. And so, of course, David, knows he's got to punish Absalom. There is a spiritual lesson right here. God knows he has to punish us for our sins, but he doesn't want to because he loves us. And so not that he does struggle because he knows totally what he's going to do, but just imagine like David struggles with, I love Absalom, he's my son. I can't take him and punish him, put him to death, but I know what he's done is awful and sinful, and he needs to be put to death. So what am I going to do? And so what eventually happens is Absalom actually